This is setting us back 4 years. We can't land on the moon. We aren't touching down for 5 years.
Do you understand what this means? NASA can't do it. They can't land man and come back.
Significant for humanity is this historical statement accompanying the first human landing on the moon. No person alive during that period could forget the first image of the American astronaut stepping onto the moon's surface and making small jumps on its surface, which had been a mere dream for thousands of years. Indeed, Neil Armstrong's steps on the moon were monumental in the history of humanity and a stunning milestone in the exploration of celestial bodies and other planets. But all of this would be great if it actually happened. Yes, as you heard, it is quite possible that the human steps on the moon never happened at all, and that everything we saw was just a hoax.
Make a film that shows us going to the moon without actually doing it.
On Friday, July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 mission was launched, which was the first mission of its kind to send humans to the moon. The commander of this mission was the American astronaut Neil Armstrong, accompanied by the Lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin. They landed on the moon with the Eagle landing module on July 20th, 1969, at 8 p.m. UTC. This mission was not the first with this goal. There were previous missions considered as preparation for this main mission, such as missions where astronauts approached the moon without landing on it and orbited around it before returning to Earth. From that moment, Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the moon, and Aldrin joined him after 19 minutes. They stayed outside the spacecraft for about 2.25 hours before returning to Earth, achieving a historic milestone. This event was supposedly broadcast live by channels and followed by 500 million people from all over the world. Celebrations were held across the United States, while sadness prevailed in the Soviet Union because it was in the midst of the Cold War between them, and there was fierce competition on both military and space levels. The Soviet Union was ahead in space exploration when, in 1961, they sent the first human into space, Yuri Gagarin, who orbited the Earth. However, the Americans surpassed them by sending the first human to the moon itself, therefore securing the competition in their favor and proving to the world their scientific and technological superiority over the Soviet Union. The United States, led by NASA, aimed to demonstrate to the world that they were the leading nation on the planet, having overcome all challenges both on Earth and in space. There is also another belief that the United States wanted to trick the Soviet Union into spending vast amounts of money on an impossible project, causing them to fail immediately. This would have resulted in significant financial losses and created an inferiority complex due to their inability to reach the moon as the Americans did. By doing so, the United States successfully spread the idea of American human superiority globally and distracted the domestic public opinion from their continuous defeats in the Vietnam War at that time. So now we know what could have driven the Americans to fake the moon landing. What are the pieces of evidence that confirm this? See, my friend, initially no one doubted that this whole thing could be a hoax. But when Bill Casing, a former Navy officer with a Bachelor of Arts, published a book titled We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle in 1976, he presented some evidence suggesting that the moon landing might have been a hoax and never actually happened. The first piece of evidence he mentioned, which we all have heard about, is that the American flag was fluttering on the moon's surface. We all know there is no air on the moon, so how could the flag move like that on its own without any wind to move it? The second piece of evidence is the absence of stars in the sky in the photos and videos. We all know that the moon has no atmosphere and clouds do not form there, so the stars should appear much clearer from the moon's surface than from Earth, where our atmosphere blocks some of their light. Therefore, the background of the scenes on the moon should have been filled with clear and bright stars, but this did not happen. The third piece of evidence is how their spacecraft managed to land on the moon's solid surface. It is known that spacecraft can only land in specific, well-equipped places with facilities, procedures, and complex equipment to ensure the safety of the spacecraft and prevent any accidents during landing. Moreover, how did it launch back from the moon to Earth when we see every day that launching spacecraft and rockets requires hundreds of experts, technicians, workers, and launch centers that did not exist on the moon? More surprisingly, the spacecraft in its landing and takeoff left no marks or craters on the moon's surface, as if it had been pulled up by a string. The fourth piece of evidence involves the Van Allen radiation belt, which consists of charged particles trapped by Earth's magnetic field, most of which originate from solar wind. The belt contains at least 2 layers, and the radiation within it is lethal to humans. Although NASA scientists claimed that humans could withstand this radiation thanks to their protective spacesuits, astronomers stated that scientists have not yet been able to produce suits that fully protect humans from the lethal radiation in the Van Allen belt. In fact, I still have a lot more evidence. Recently, a director conducted an interview with an American newspaper, stating that he confronted an astronaut revealing to him that the moon landing was fake. When Buzz Aldrin learned that this would be published, he punched him. The director said all the photos we saw were fake, and the most convincing evidence was the shadows in the photos taken on the moon. He said he conducted experiments proving that these images could not possibly have been taken as they appeared without artificial light, and that it was impossible for them to look like that if they relied solely on sunlight. Moreover, he stated that no one ever explained how in the alleged photos from the moon, the shadows intersect under sunlight at 90 degrees from objects 5 meters apart. The appearance of shadows this way confirms the presence of artificial lighting. The shadow resulting from sunlight should be parallel, not intersecting as we saw. He confirmed that this is entirely impossible, and that the photos were taken with electrical lighting inside a television studio. He said he knows this well because he is a director, and this is his job. He also debunked many other pieces of evidence that clearly show the Americans did not land on the moon in 1969 as they claim. However, evidence began to emerge later, exposing the falsity of this story more and more. Let's see how NASA managed to execute this hoax so precisely according to the proponents of this theory. Many researchers said that this hoax was carried out in several stages, including filming the astronauts' descent on the moon. They claimed this was done in a specially equipped studio with all the available facilities to make it look like they were actually on the moon. They brought in one of the most famous directors at the time to film these scenes until they got the best shots possible to prove they were on the moon. The second stage involved actually launching these astronauts into space in a rocket to convince the audience that they had indeed gone to space. However, in reality, they remained in Earth's orbit. Additionally, they had old photos taken by an unmanned probe that they used as backgrounds for the scenes as if it were the moon. By combining the real footage of the astronauts in space, but only in Earth's orbit, with the fake scenes of them landing on the moon, they managed to convince the whole world that they had indeed landed on the moon. The director also mentioned that the response time in the scenes we saw to the communications with Earth was immediate, confirming that the astronauts were indeed in Earth's orbit, only 300 miles above the planet's surface. He said they should have delayed the radio communication to make the hoax more convincing. Naturally, all this evidence embarrassed the United States and NASA. What was their response to this? NASA said that the flag didn't need air to flutter in space because the astronauts had to turn the flagpole left and right to penetrate the lunar soil and fix it in place. Consequently, the flag appeared to flutter due to the motion resulting from the process of fixing it in the ground, not from air or anything else. As for the photos, angles, shadows, and all the observations made by the researchers, they were attributed to the nature of the moon and the lighting conditions there, which are completely different from those on Earth and the known laws governing it. The biggest evidence supporting their truthfulness was the millions of people who watched the event live on TV at the time, which they claimed is the ultimate proof of the authenticity of these scenes.